Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to you by Alexander Fortune.
Thanks, Alex.
I seriously appreciate it. Thank you so much, Alex. He also has a website if you want to go check him out. It's alexfortune.birb.com. I don't know how to pronounce that. Would that be verb?
Yeah, alexfortune.verb.com. Verb is spelled with an I. And not
he has a really funny skit video on there. You should go check it out.
This is episode 90. We've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, there's been a couple good ones in there.
Yeah. And the ones that I thought weren't that good aren't that terrible when I re-listen to them. So that's good.
I like that you have to, state that they're not that terrible.
Yeah, they're not.
There's still a level of terrible.
They're not that bad.
A level of bad. Just a little bit above what we were thinking.
Yeah, but 90 of them, nonetheless.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This week we have Steve Hindy on from Shark.
Yeah, I actually met Steve when he came to Utah to the Olympic Rodeo protest. Years and years. Way too many years ago. Let's not age myself.
And I met him a little bit after that when he came for the Salt Lake Animal Rights Convention.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Also not
going to age myself.
An amazing guy. He does hunt sabs. And anyone who actually does hunt sabs, I mean, my hat's off to you.
That's one of the scariest things you can do. You're putting yourself out there with people with guns.
That are armed and crazy and they like killing things.
Hey, Jeremy, do you have any news or events this week?
Okay, you remember how last week we talked about the dog being shot by a police officer in a yard?
Yeah, guys.
Yeah, guys. Exactly, right? Guess what happened this week in Ogden? Pitbull got shot by a police officer.
It's ridiculous.
Like, what the fuck?
It's so
crazy.
Common.
It is.
And honestly, I'm surprised how little it's talked about. But it's such a common occurrence. Police shooting dogs. It just needs to be stopped.
It totally does. What's we talked about Chuck's program he's doing, protectmypooch.com, where he's making those no trespassing signs. He's gotten a ton of exposure for it. I'm super excited for it.
Local news.
He was on the news, not just local news story. He's on the news. They're interviewing him about it. They went and interviewed a law professor because of it. Super awesome. So check out his website, protectmypooch.com, and you get a sign. It's just I don't want my premise searched. I have a dog. If it's going to be searched, please contact Animal Control.
Yeah, he actually got new signs that he's coming out with for service animals as well.
And armadillos, maybe?
I don't think so, yeah.
Does anyone have can an armadillo live in Utah? But maybe if you're in Texas, I don't know. Order a sign. No, but protectmypooch.com, they're $6.99. And hit him up, man. He's just a local vegan activist trying to help, do what he can.
And let him know where he heard it from.
So, do you have any events going on this week?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be giving a presentation at Boeing Anarchist Collective on Friday, August 1st. It's at 7 p.m. I'll be talking about grand jury resistance and how we can create and build communities of resistance.
Boeing is listed inside the slingshot. So if you have a slingshot, look it up. There's the address, and you know how to get there. And if you have the slingshot, you'll know that on the 29th of July, 1901, the U.S. Socialist Party was established.
That's your wife's birthday.
Yeah, that is.
She wasn't born yet, though.
She's not a socialist either.
Thanks, Obama. I really hope you enjoyed this one.
Well, I thought you guys might be naked. I didn't want to miss out on that.
I mean, I'm not, but we can arrange that.
All right. I'll just play that in my head.
It's probably a better picture that way. I'm sure a lot of people know your origin story of coming to animal rights, but would you mind explaining it just in case they haven't heard it?
Well, it was I was a hunter fisherman, and on my way, I had a boat out on Montauk, Long Island, and because I was a shark hunter at that point, and on my way to shark hunting, I stopped in Pennsylvania and I saw a live pigeon shoot, and that was kind of the beginning of the end for me as far as being a hunter, at least a hunter of animals. And I kind of became a hunter of animal cruelty and the cowards who conduct animal cruelty instead.
So you had a campaign against pigeon shooting. You want to kind of go into that as well a little bit?
No, we have an ongoing campaign against pigeon shoots, mainly in Pennsylvania, because they have for many decades had this activity where they literally toss live pigeons out of boxes. Individual pigeons put in small individual boxes. It's the predecessor to clay target shooting, but instead a guy calls for a target and a live pigeon is tossed up out of a box, and they've got a row of boxes, and he does this one after the other. So it's just a wanton slaughter. These animals are not eaten. Any of them that are recovered are simply dumped. We've got video and pictures of dead piles, which include not just dead animals, but live ones also. Many of these pigeons are injured but escape the shoot area. So they go down 100 feet or 100 yards or quarter mile later on in brush and woods and stuff like this. Or in one case, in the Delaware River, where they drown. And these animals are left to suffer for, could be hours, it could be days, before they succumb to predation, exposure, hunger, thirst, their wounds, whatever. This is, as long as I've been going after pigeon shoots, which started back in, I think, 1989, it has been a violation of Pennsylvania's humane laws. The law says that you cannot abandon an animal, and every owned pigeon, which is tossed up out of a box, is abandoned, just as if it was any other kind of animal. And you cannot neglect an animal. Neglect is depriving them of food, water, shelter, veterinary care when needed. So all those injured animals out there are the victims of neglect. Since pigeon shooting is not part of hunting, there is no season on them. There is the Fish and Game Commission does not in any way regulate or have anything to do with pigeon shoots. These are violations of existing Pennsylvania humane law, but because the NRA runs the state, and runs the state the way the NRA would like to run the world, it's just I don't know, can I say this? It's a shithole. They've turned Pennsylvania into a shithole. Do I get to say that?
You can say whatever you want. There's long been, with me in my animal rights work, huge headbutting with animal welfare organizations and humane organizations. I've never been able to work with any of them very effectively.
Well, Shark calls itself an animal protection organization. We don't actually call ourselves animal rights. It's semantics, but I kind of feel like animal rights is something of a philosophy. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about animals being tossed out of boxes, shot, left to suffer in so many cases out in the woods, even if they're retrieved, they're simply dumped, many of them while still alive. That's really not an issue of animal rights. That's just common decency. You don't have to be an animal activist in any way to look at that and you say, hey, that's nuts.
It's pretty fucking gross.
It is.
I've never been around pigeon hunting like that. Is it an East Coast thing and we're just not around it here on the West Coast?
It's mainly a Pennsylvania thing. It's if you go to YouTube and you punch in Pennsylvania pigeon shoot, you're going to see dozens and dozens of our videos coming up. Mm-hmm. And the pigeon shoot itself, while being obviously just completely depraved, Then there's the other things that go on in the pigeon shoots, because the kind of person who's attracted to this is, of course, a solidly narcissistic, psychopathic, sick bastard. I mean, they should be locked up in a cell, both for their safety and for the rest of the decent public. I mean, we've got video clearly, graphically showing people grabbing pigeons, ripping them wing from wing, slamming them to the ground, kicking them around like soccer balls, taking wounded pigeons, tossing them up in the air again to shoot them again. We've got a very, very small number of Pennsylvania Humane Society police officers who have tried to do something about it. I remember one lady called the state police, and in her capacity as a humane officer, described in detail what she was actively looking at. And when she told the state police officer that they were picking up the pigeons and shooting them again, throwing them up and shooting them again, the officer said, well, they're putting them down again. I mean, whether he was being serious or whether he was trying to be cute really doesn't matter. Obviously, a person like that should not be a state police officer. Shouldn't be a local. Shouldn't be private security. I wouldn't have that guy, emptying the garbage at my company. I wouldn't have any, seriously. And you've got a governor who's nothing, a Governor Tom Corbett, a Republican who is nothing but a shill for the NRA, just a drone. And yet, on the other hand, who's Ed Rendell, the former Democratic governor of Pennsylvania? I called him a sleazeball when he was in office, and I got a lot of, that was the one time that these humane organizations kind of stepped up, was when I called Governor Rendell, the Democrat, a sleazeball, and they said, you shouldn't call our governor a sleazeball. But he was. He wouldn't take a stand on the pigeon shoot. And so, like I said before, it doesn't matter to me if they're left or right, if they're Republican or Democrat or whatever you want to talk about. Everybody in Pennsylvania, just about, is afraid to take on the NRA, and the NRA is behind these pigeon shoots. You've got a guy named Leo Holt, who is a former NRA board member. He is the former president of the Philadelphia Gun Club, which is that pigeon shooting gun club I had mentioned before. He was on the board of the NRA. John Sigler, who was the head of the Delaware GOP pigeon shooter. By the way, we got him kicked out as the head of the Delaware GOP. and Ted Nugent. Ted Nugent shot at the infamous and now defunct Higgins pigeon shoot. And there's others, too, that we simply, we're going to find others as we keep finding out who more of them are. These guys are so upset with us that they've now sued us in both state court and federal court. And they're trying to claim that, Shark is a terrorist organization and all that. It just shows what cowards these people are, because we do not attack them. They actually physically attack us. I've had guns pulled on me. Been physically attacked, been hit by cars, and these guys are trying to claim that we're hurting them. It just shows you, like I said, it's the whine factor, that they want to come out, we're patriots, we're proud gun owners, we're here to protect our country, if the government gets out of control or something like that. But then as soon as somebody steps up against them and simply even talks about or exposes the kind of low-life animal abuse they're involved in, oh my God, the bitching, crying, and moaning is just off the scale, and they start filing slap lawsuits and all kinds of things. I'm just waiting for the lawsuits to get in front of an intelligent judge, and then they're going to be crying, moaning like there's no tomorrow, and it'll be funny to see what a judge says about that.
Hunt stabs are one of the things that have always scared me as an activist, that I've never really participated in, because you're directly confronting something holding a weapon right there.
If a guy pulls a gun on you and you're looking down the barrel of this thing, I have to admit it was a very interesting experience when that happened. Guy pulled a loaded semi-automatic handgun, and the very first thing that I did was look right down the barrel of it, because it was just kind of you're half in shock. But the other half is, well, now it's either going to happen or it's not. And so while you don't want to rush at the guy, you also don't want to back down, because some really sick twist like this, I mean, that's like a turn on for them. Who knows what they'll do? So when it happened, I stood there, and my girlfriend Janet was off to the side a little bit, and she had a video camera, and I just kept saying, film it, get him. And but to tell you the truth, that guy was more afraid than I was. I mean, I was concerned. He was actually afraid. That's why he pulled the gun, because he was afraid. We hadn't hurt him. We had no intention of hurting him. He was in a vehicle with 2 other guys, and yet he pulled a loaded handgun simply because he was afraid. When these clowns come face to face with real people, just average real people, I'm not saying, we're somebody special. We're just average real people. But when they come face to face with them by their own efforts, I guess they expect that because of all the twistiness in their own heads, that we're going to collapse or something like that. When you just stand there and look at them, they just kind of collapse. And in this case, this guy had actually had grabbed Janet. She had a video camera. He had grabbed her. And so I gave him a push. I just gave him one push. And that's when the guy pulled the gun and was so scared to death. You could just see it. And the cowardice in these people, if they've got their guns and they've got all the rhetoric in that, if they really feel that strongly about it, they want to use their guns and big tough guys, let's send them to Afghanistan. Wayne LaPierre, I mean, let's send him over to Afghanistan, let him go off on all that crazy stuff he spouts. And, the only answer for a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, go try that over there in Afghanistan, where they're actually aiming back at you, Wayne or Ted. And that way our kids won't be getting hurt, and we'll just let things settle out, because they like guns over there in Afghanistan too. You'd think that they'd want to go there, but they don't want any part of it. I don't know. How does that work?
So how did you guys get the idea to start using drones as part of your hunt, Sabs?
Well, in the beginning, when we first started chasing these guys with cameras, they were shooting, they were doing what they were doing right off the side of a public road. You stand on the sidewalk, or you stand on the side of the road, and you could see everything, and you could film everything that was going on. And, that scared the hell out of them, because it doesn't take anything to scare the hell out of them. So they started moving farther away off the road. And so then we got stronger lenses, and we continued to videotape what they were doing and exposing it. And so then they moved farther off the road. They started going behind fences and behind shrubs and trees. So we got what are called high pods, and they can raise the camera up 30 feet. And we used that at the Philadelphia Gun Club and some other places, and continued to film them. And so then they really got scared. They started going up on hills inside of, where they were completely surrounded by high trees and all this. In one case, they're on the Delaware River, and they spent a fortune to erect a 30-plus foot screen. It is one of the ugliest things you ever saw. We call it the underwear, because it looks like somebody put this enormous set of underwear around these guys. And so that's when we said, okay, the only thing we can do now is either buy a helicopter or send in the drones. And and we've sent the drones, and they hate them, and they're afraid of them. And really, I don't know how these people live from day to day. And like I said, there really is this side of me that feels very bad for them, because I think that this whole persecution complex, this bully cowardice, like I was saying before about Ted Nugent, this guy spends virtually every moment of every day of his life trying to reinforce what a man he is. And when you're a real man, you don't have to do that. You know that you are who and what you are. Your positives and your negatives, we all have them. But a guy like Nugent and a guy like LaPierre, they'll never have enough guns. They'll never take enough lives. And they'll never stop that shrill whine about that their way is the right way. because they know it's not.
One of our past guests, Willpotter, has a campaign right now to get drones up in the air over factory farms. What are your thoughts about that, and also about how ag laws are going to start affecting the use of drones and cameras?
Yeah. Well, you've got NRA-backed minions trying to pass as many anti-drone laws as they can. Now, you really got to think about that. How many lives have been taken by drones in this country versus how many lives have been taken by guns? You got the NRA screaming, of course, because that's what they do, about what a threat these drones are. They've never killed anybody. And then you've this organization that supports weapons that have been killing innocents and children for decades are behind it. It is almost the definition of insanity, isn't it?
What do they say the threats are of the drones?
Well, to their privacy, of course. My God, their privacy. And my response to that has always been, let me tell you what the ultimate invasion of privacy is. There's a big fucking chunk of lead entering my body without my permission or consent. That's an invasion of privacy, and they don't seem to have any problem with that. What it really is that the NRA is worried about their board members, former presidents like John Sigler, Ted Nugent, and Leo Holt, shooting pigeons or shooting other small, inoffensive animals that are tossed out of boxes or tethered to trees or whatever the hell it is that they're doing. That's what they're really afraid of, about being exposed for what they are. Because, while the average thinking person can see what psychopaths these people are, they seem to think they're still pulling the wool over our eyes.
What's crazy to me is it doesn't seem like even an average hunter would support these kind of pigeon shoots. And I don't support either one, but these just seem like sport killing.
The average hunter does not support pigeon shoots. I'll say that right now. I don't agree with hunting anymore, remembering that I used to be a hunter. But it was pigeon shoots that made me start rethinking. And when I decided, well, actually, initially, my concept was that hunters like me, my fellow hunters, that we would see to it that this was stopped, because hunting at that point, 25 years ago, was already under pressure. We were already being, being called wanton killers and all this kind of thing. And when I saw pigeon shoots, I couldn't believe it, because I had read about pigeon shoots. When I went to my first pigeon shoot, it was more to dispel what had been written than anything else. I was going out there to take issue with the people who were writing this nonsense about shooting pigeons tossed out of boxes. And what I had read, horrible as it was, did not do justice to the unbelievably cowardly cruelty that I saw. And I went to these people and I said, look, guys, what in the hell are you doing? I'm a hunter, but this isn't hunting. And they looked at me and they said, you're a hunter? I said, sure. And he said, well, then you're no different than us. Now, at the time, I completely disagreed with that. And I guess even today I still do. Mm-hmm. But the problem was that when I tried to get my fellow hunters, my associates, to go out there, if need be, and physically take those guns away, the only fellow hunter that I ended up going out there with was my brother. That was the only one. And so while I do believe that there are some people out there who still respect hunting ethics, they are unwilling to stand up for hunting ethics as far as taking on the NRA. Very few. There's right now I'm aware of one legislator who calls himself a hunter in Pennsylvania and is taking issue with the NRA. There are probably a few more, but there's one guy who's standing out there taking all the flack. And boy, they're throwing it at him. The NRA they're trying to get this guy eliminated. Not because he's against the Second Amendment, because he's not. Not because he's an anti-hunter, but because he's not. But because he simply says, look, this is not hunting. This is just killing. This is just cruelty. And like I said, this really is not, it's anti-Second Amendment. because, it's like if we said, well, we can't take the drunk drivers off the road because that's the first step to ending all driving. Of course, that's a ridiculous, ludicrous, childish piece of nonsense to say something like that. Of course, we're going to eliminate as much as we can drunk driving from our roads because we don't want our innocents and children being killed by such people. And yet the NRA will take a stand against eliminating, guns from the hands of dangerous people. And if you stand up against that in any way, you're either with them in all their insanity or you're against them. And there are very, very few gun owners today who are willing to stand up to the NRA. And I think that is very, very sad.
So how did your friends and family react to you coming and completely almost changing your whole philosophy on hunting over the years?
I to really think about that, well, I think my family pretty well took it in stride. I think some of my associates were somewhat appalled because I was very, very into hunting fishing. I mean, like I said, I had my own boat out on Long Island. I lived 1,000 miles away from it, but that's where it was kept because I was going to go out there every single year, and I was going to, for probably 4 weeks out of the year, I was going to be out there, whether it was cold or hot, whether it was calm or stormy. I was going to be out there. And so for me to change so much, I think some of my fellow hunters found that to be very strange. But to me, I haven't really stopped hunting. I put down the guns and I picked up the cameras. But you still have to know how to track these bastards. You have to know, where to go, when to go, use the right techniques to catch them. When I get, I can't really show you this, but like, for instance, when we get articles or political cartoons or whatever that are in that tell the stories, we put them up on the wall. I used to have a 7.5-foot mako shark up on the wall and a 24-pound northern pike and a 25-pound king salmon. And, and I had pictures and all this kind of stuff. And now we've got articles and political cartoons and laws that have been passed to improve things for animals. So the hunt still continues. It's just now instead of animals who really have very, very limited ability to fight back or even protect themselves, now we're up against people with guns and cars and political allies and all this kind of thing. And it's far more of an adventure and a challenge than it ever was before.
Talking about like the articles and the changing of the laws, what's been like the most rewarding thing as far as being an activist goes?
Oh boy. We were very, very happy to get Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola to stop sponsoring bullfights. That was great. It was a fantastic day when we finally defeated Pigeon Shoots in Illinois because they used to have them. They used to be expressly legal, and now they're expressly illegal. It will be a fantastic day when we eliminate Pigeon Shoots from Pennsylvania, and regardless of the corrupt politicians, are you hearing me, Tom Corbett? And regardless of the impotent humane societies like the Federated Humane Societies of Pennsylvania, and in spite of the corrupt law enforcement, we will prevail there. That will be a very, very proud day. Actually, we've had many, many successes exposing rodeos and exposing one thing after another. So it's all good. I mean, there's a lot of times where you just feel like we have very limited resources and we're up against unlimited resources, and at times it feels very difficult. But there's a lot of high moments where the lives of animals are improved. I spent 30 years killing animals, and so I really feel that I have a large debt to repay. And I'd like to think, though, that we're on track to do that.
You visited here in Salt Lake a while ago for an animal rights convention. You let us borrow the Tiger truck even. So something here that's a huge issue is rodeos, and you guys also have an ongoing campaign with rodeos. Do you want to talk about a little about that, and also about the tiger truck?
Well, sure. We just came off of Janet and I just came off of doing the Salinas Rodeo in California, and we have another team in Cheyenne, Wyoming, right now doing the Cheyenne Wyoming Rodeo. Rodeo is the bullfighting of the United States. We've done bullfighting. We have filmed approximately 36 different bullfights, animals tortured to death, and at the average bullfight, 4 bulls are brought into the ring, and one after the other, and torture killed. Now you can try and call it art if you're an idiot, or you can do whatever you want to do to try and put bullfight in this light or the other. But it's just the torture killing of an unarmed animal by a bunch of armed thugs. And so people go, many people, right-minded people will go, oh, that's terrible. They're killing these animals. And it's true. The average bullfight will haul out 4 bulls in the course of an afternoon. But that said, I've sat in the arena at Cheyenne, and I've seen as many as a half dozen calves. We're talking animals that are just a few months old, being hauled out of the arena because they were treated so abominably that, their necks or legs were broken, their tracheas were crushed, internal injuries, you name it, it can happen to these little babies. Not to mention the horses, the bulls, the enormous number of steers over the years that have been injured and killed. Really, we're talking about the bull rings of the United States. It's an unconscionable thing that goes on in rodeo, and yet they've managed, thanks to Hollywood, with the John Wayne movies and Roy Rogers and Audie Murphy and all this, have managed to package themselves as Western culture and tradition and history. They're none of the above. No self-respecting rancher in present day or old would treat their animals the way they treat them in rodeos. On top of that, they're trying to claim that the rodeo events, such as calf roping or the bucking animals or whatever, are offshoots of ranch history, of ranch work. They're not connected to ranch work except in like a very perverted way. Well, like steer wrestling has no connection to ranch work whatsoever. None. Same thing with bull riding. No connection to ranch work at all. There was no point to riding bulls around. The roping events were not done in ranch work the way they're done in rodeos. Roping in ranch work, in rodeos, are a timed event. And it has to be in the shortest possible time, which means that the animals will go through any kind of abuse that the contestant feels is required to get it done as quick as possible. In ranch work, it was very carefully done, because if you're going to be killing a calf, the rancher can't even afford to have you anymore. The calf was the rancher's, the payout on his investment, and he needs those calves. He's going to continue to be a viable rancher. So to put animals at risk in rodeo is the antithesis of what what happens in ranch work, where they're trying to bring animals to market. And even the bucking events, maybe especially the bucking events, they were trying to train horses. They were breaking them and training them to do a job. In rodeos, they're taking tame, domesticated animals and brutalizing them and tormenting and terrorizing them to make them appear to be wild from pain and fear. So it's perversion. It's not respecting history. It's perverting history. And at this point, really, the argument about rodeo is over. The rodeo industry. Well, there's Ruben. I don't know if you can hear him or not, but Ruben's right. The rodeo industry agrees with us about the cruelty. And that's why places like the Reno Rodeo and the rodeo in Harney County, Oregon, and, any number of them now are banning cameras. Why? Because when the cameras are there, they're exposed for violating rules. Hey, Ruben, knock it off. Geez. And it really comes down to rodeo people who are sitting in the stands. They're watching animals being tormented and all that. And I don't think that they can any longer make the argument that there's no cruelty. They can't possibly do it. They're watching being animals carted off. They're being roped so violently that they're cartwheeling through the air. Many of these animals are being shocked because, like I said, they're tame, domesticated animals. And the rodeos are banning cameras. So the argument has been won. And now it's just a question of when or will this country ever actually say, we claim to be a just and a compassionate country, and now we're actually going to do it, because we don't do it. This is a country that treats animals like they're disposable, whether it's in our whale jails or slaughtering deer, the government slaughtering deer because there's too many of them. When I go out and I see what the problems are in this country, whether it's too much traffic on the roads or too much pollution or too much crime or all that, I never see a deer as the one that's responsible for all that. I always see humans. And we don't eliminate humans, well, except for a small amount of botched executions these days. Usually, human life, we treat them with a little bit more respect. But until we realize that we all share this world together, humans and non-humans alike, it's just this country will continue its slide, and the world will continue to turn itself into more and more of a shithole. And I mean, frankly, we as humans, we're fantastic with technological stuff, and I appreciate that. We use that. And I think that we're very, very good at that. Ruben, come here, buddy. But when it comes down to the things that really matter in life, here's Ruben. Come here. Come up here and show everybody. Come here. Come on. No, he's right here. You'll have to. He's great.
Have you ever run into legal troubles using the Tiger truck?
Well, we've had a lot of times where the police have tried to create legal problems. We had the FBI following us around when the Tiger truck was on the Olympic torch route and was following the Olympic torch from city to city to city. The FBI was actually following us around, was going from town to town telling the local police that we were making bomb threats against the Olympics, that we were trying to start riots and trying to start physical confrontations with police. We actually got that in a report, an internal police investigation by the Albuquerque Police Department. Got it on their letterhead. It says that. We've got that up on our website. So, yeah, the police from local police departments all the way up to the FBI have tried to claim that simply using your First Amendment right on behalf of animals, was a crime, and it's not. We don't back down to that kind of thug behavior, whether it's local police, Pennsylvania State Police, or the FBI. And so, here's the thing: if you're really not doing anything wrong, I do believe enough in this country, just enough, that if you're really not doing anything wrong, you're being very, very careful and very open to not doing anything wrong, that you can stand up to these powers that be and come out, okay.
Is there any tactics that you wish were being used but aren't being really used very much?
Yes, I think that this movement needs, that's kind of a two-pronged answer. Yes, we should be using more technology. Mm-hmm. Like Willpotter says he's going to use drones. He should. Absolutely should. Every organization that can afford to do so should be doing it. We should be using technology. We've got those high pods that can raise cameras 30 feet into the air. We have high-powered lenses. There are organizations like Mercy for Animals that use hidden cameras. We've used hidden cameras. We should be doing all of that. Our opposition does all of that and more. And so, yes, technology is available out there. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. Let's use it for good. Why should only the bad guys be using it for bad? We should be using it for good. But the other part, at this point, is that this animal so-called animal protection movement has in large part become inactive. You've got organizations out there with a ton of money. They got more money than God. And they're in large part sitting on it. And it's making me crazy. We're running around from rodeo to rodeo to rodeo to Pigeon Shoots, and you've got these humane organizations in Pennsylvania who won't do anything. But that is really just kind of a one view of what's happening in large part all over the country. Now, especially these humane societies and SPCAs, from large to small, in large part, given the tens of millions of dollars some of them are bringing in, are we seeing results for those tens of millions of dollars? Of course not. But even the smaller groups, in many cases, I saw one person who had worked for a large organization. She said, I know how they waste their money and all that. So we should only be supporting small groups. That's not necessarily true either. I think it's very important for people who care about animals today to take a good hard look at the organizations that they want to support. What do they really do? Look past their advertising, look past their rhetoric, and look at what they really do and what the results have really been. And in large part, I was just at a conference in Los Angeles for the Humane Movement. And I don't like to say this, but as I went from booth to booth, and I was just looking to say, okay, what does this group do? So many of them, as far as I could tell, don't do much at all. And I hate to say that about our movement, but if my car screws up on me, it's not going to do me any good as far as getting reliable transportation to sit there and gloss over the problems that the car has. If the car's not running right, what's the matter with it so that we can get it running right? And that's how I feel about this movement and today, is that it's not running right. It hasn't been running right for a while, and we need to get it running right. So people, those armchair activists really need to try and get out of their armchairs. Those armchair groups, a lot of groups need new leadership. There needs to be some serious shakeups. There are animals dying, being tortured and killed, and horrible things happening to them by the tens of millions, by the billions out there. Factory farms and the fur industry and the rodeos and bullfighting in other countries and the pigeon shoots and just one thing after another, more things than I could go on all day about it. And we need to do something. We're very quick. I'm very quick to point at the NRA and say, those are bad guys. The leadership of the NRA is the Al-Qaeda of the United States. I think they ought to be designated as terrorists because they certainly terrorize animals all over the country and put them through horrible things. Hell, I think they're terrorists when it comes to people because children are being, slaughtered out there because of the way that these people are throwing their political weight around. But what are we on the other side doing about it? Very few of us are out in the field, in the killing fields, in the arenas of torture, or even in the political realms, fighting to do something about that. We know that they're the problem, but we're supposed to be the cure. And in large part, I think that we are not doing what we need to do.
So what kind of advice would you give to a new activist who's just trying to get involved?
If that activist, if they're actually active, I think the first thing they should do is have a good video camera and know how to use it. And they should either, if I was starting all over again, I never wanted to start Shark because I didn't want to be a group head. I didn't want to have to do all the stuff that you have to do as a group head. I just wanted to be active, and I wanted to take a camera and give my services to an organization. Tell me where they have animal abuse. Tell me what I have to do. Any peaceful legal technique to expose it, to help, to stop it, I was willing to do. And so if I was if I was there again, I would try to find a good active group who can either put that equipment in my hands and put me to work or whatever. That, I think that's the thing to do. And if they want to start their own group, if they think they have a new way to pursue things, by all means, do that. You see, in our case, it was just that most groups were out there protesting, and I didn't find myself to be a good protester. If I was holding a sign and some jerk spit on me, I was too tempted to ram that sign up where the sun don't shine. And so, well, really, I mean, I had a hard time just taking it. And because I was a hunter, and so instead now if somebody, does something to us now in the field, we may defend ourselves, but we don't go farther than that. But those cameras and exposing cruelty with those cameras, that's what scares these people more than anything. I swear they have nightmares about it. And so it's both my desire to relieve the animals as much as I can, and frankly, as far as shoving that stick up where the sun doesn't shine, exposing what they do firsthand with video so people can see it for themselves and make up their own mind. That's the equivalent. That's the nonviolent, peaceful equivalent of shoving that stick up where the sun don't shine.
It just reminded me of how many confrontations I've had where I've been spit on or punched or more.
It's definitely something that happens.
Like I said, I think every person has a right to defend themselves. And but funny story. It was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, something like that. We were at a pigeon shoot, and there was a pigeon that had gone down on the ground. And it was struggling, and I went to get the pigeon, and a guy hit me. One of the gun club people hit me, tackled me, and on the way down, it was just automatic. The guy hits me, I'm going down, but I was able to grab him at the same time, and I just rabbit punched him 2 times to make him stop. And he did stop. In fact, he went fetal. He's like, starts screaming like a spanked brat. And and it was over. I stood up and I walked away. This guy calls the police. He started it. He calls the police. And by the time it was all over with, first of all, the cop gets there, and it was in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, which is very problematic for us. But this cop was actually a good cop. He was there to do his job, which is law enforcement. And he was there to write an accurate police report. So he, in his accurate police report, wrote that the guy had a slightly red ear, which he did, because that's where he got rabbit punched twice. And then there was a witness from the gun club who said, that I was kicking him and stuff like that. Well, so the guy, or the way he had described it, the cop went back and he questioned him about it and realized then that these guys weren't telling, the story together. They were telling different lies. But then the guy, so the police, because of this guy's accurate report, the police wouldn't do anything. So this guy writes to the district attorney, and the Bucks County district attorney, David Heckler, is as corrupt as I think he could possibly be. And David, Mr. Heckler, if you want to sue me for that, here it is. You are corrupt as you possibly could be. And so he writes now that he got a broken nose, and I forget it was one thing after another. All these ailments that he suffered. And so the district attorney brought a couple of charges against me. Well, then there was a preliminary hearing. And at the preliminary hearing, the guy had these problems and a half a dozen more. And by the time it was over with, by the time he got to trial, he had a drooping eye. He had neurological damage. He had a chipped tooth. He had a broken nose. He was bleeding down his throat. He had, what was it? I forget, asbestos. It was crazy. It was just off the wall. By the time trial came up, first of all, you should have seen the jury. The jurors are looking at this guy like, dude, you're out of your mind. You can't tell the same story from one hearing to the next. And we were actually entertained. And I was absolved. I mean, I was found not guilty on both charges. But this is what happens. You have to. This is if being a peaceful and nonviolent person wasn't enough for as far as not really like taking it to these guys. The other thing is that if you so much as look at them cross-eyed, as you guys know, they start screaming and crying like you did something to them. So if you actually do hit them, I mean, it's the end of the world. It's absolute Armageddon. You see, people like this, they believe that they should be able to do anything that they want to animals and get away with it. Furthermore, they think they should be able to do anything to you and get away with it. But if you do anything to them, it's the end of the world. It's like it was down in the South, half a century ago. You could do anything to a black person. A white guy could do anything to a black person. If a black person did something to a white guy, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And it's just the nature of these folks. It's their cowardice, it's their cruelty, it's their corruption. Corruption at their very, I would say, soul, but it's more like a lack of a soul.
So you've obviously had some police interactions in the past. What is the funniest police story that you have?
I think you must already know the answer to that. There was an incident, because it was so funny. There was an incident in Jordan Valley, Oregon, where I had a day earlier, two of our investigators one was arrested and one was bullied by the local police. They hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, they went on to win subsequent lawsuits against the police. So over the night, I was flying from Chicago to Jordan Valley so that I could deal with it firsthand. And I got to the rodeo the next day, and they knew who I was. They kicked me out. And that was they could do that because it was private property. They could do it. It was a cowardly thing to do, but that's what cowards do. They do cowardly things. But so they kicked me out, or they actually didn't kick me out. They said either you have to take your camera out or you have to leave. And I said, well, I'll leave, but you have to give me my money back. And they actually did. So I left, and they sicked the police on me. The police followed me for 10 miles outside of Jordan Valley, and then they did a traffic stop, and it was all bullshit. And I was like not arguing with them or stuff like that, but I was standing up to them. I was pointing out things like they had removed their name tags, and the one guy identified himself, but the second guy wouldn't, and they were just giving me a line of crap. And finally, they were done. I got in my car, they got in theirs. But while they were trying to act like big, tough cops, while they were, there with me, once they got back in their car, they started talking for real because they forgot that they had turned their own recording off. They hadn't turned it off. And so they start talking back and forth. And the one guy is shitting bricks. He's going, oh, man, we're going to get sued. That's the guy that put all the stuff up last year on the internet. That's the guy. We're going to get sued. I didn't want to stop him. It was that rodeo committee that made us stop him. They're the ones to blame. You know that, right? And all of a sudden you hear him go, damn it, I'm still recording. And then the camera goes off. And you know what is the thing about that is that the only guy out of that cop department in that bunch who was a halfway decent cop was that poor son of a gun who said, damn it, I'm still recording, because he was actually acknowledging that what they did was wrong. He was the only guy who even had a conscience in that police department. And so I always felt kind of bad for him. And his name was Officer Beck. And I hope he goes to a different police department and has a decent career as a good cop. But that was the funniest moment when poor Officer Beck goes, damn it, I'm still recording, after he's pouring his heart out about, well, we shouldn't have done this. And but it was also interesting. And this is the thing about standing up to bullies. We went back to Jordan Valley this year, and two big things had changed. One thing was that Oregon, had actually passed the law to stop horse tripping. That was the big thing that we were after. They had passed a law to stop horse tripping. And so my kudos to the legislators in Oregon who did the right thing. And the second thing was that, again, officers from that county were there, but they were all the A team. They were all, as far as I could tell, good, professional, cordial cops who did the best to do their job. So I think, you're going to find bad cops in virtually every department of any size at all. And there's always going to be, you'd like to think, the good along with the bad. But if we as animal protectors stand strong, we can prevail. It may take years. In the case of like Pennsylvania, for instance, where it's a perfect storm of cruelty, cowardice, and corruption, it may take decades, but we will prevail. And I think it's only when our side either gives up, never give up, or goes to what I call the dark side, where we start to incorporate techniques that are indefensible, resorting to violence and that kind of thing. That's when we lose. And we have to remember that when we lose for the animals too. So even if we feel like we just can't go on anymore, we have to go on for those who have no voice.
So how can an activist get involved with what you guys are doing and follow your work?
Well, our main website is sharkonline.org. We have a number of other websites, but they all go off of that one. If somebody out there has an adventuresome spirit and they're not going to back down, and at the same time they're going to use their heads instead of just reacting, as emotional wrecks, they could contact us. We need good people. We're a very, very small organization, and there are very, very few people in this movement, frankly, I believe, who could do what we do and continue to do it year after year and not back down to the powers that be. But there are other good organizations out there. Don't get me wrong. Mercy for Animals. I really like that bunch. And there are others too, Last Chance for Animals and numbers that aren't coming to mind right now. There are good groups out there, and every person's got to make their own mind up about who's doing what they think is important. But I just hope that people won't fall, whether they're donors or volunteers or whatever, don't fall for rhetoric. Look for real results.
Well, we end every interview saying, fuck, shit, damn. Would you mind saying it for us this week?
Let me be a little bit more pointed. Fuck, shit. Fuck you assholes in Pennsylvania who won't do anything, whether you be corrupt law enforcement or those humane groups who won't do anything, especially fuck you. I shit on you, same bunch, and damn you to hell.
Oh, that's the best one we've ever had. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good night.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
This week we heard...
Red sparrows. We stood transfixed in blank.
Right now you're listening to...
Fugazi. Guilford Fall.
And as always...
El Comandantes.
Which side
are you on?
I like that little throwback.
ProtectMyPooch.com is allowing us to give away one of their signs. So if you go to any of our social media, which you can find at whichsidepodcast.com, and click on the social tab, you can enter to win it.
You enter to win by following us on any of those. All of our followers are automatically entered. And you get an extra entry by posting it. Fuck.
Shit, damn.
I like, I really liked how he ended it, the fuck shit damn this week. So, in that style, fuck you, Jordan. I am going to shit on you. And damn it, it's going to be fun.
Fuck, I love you, Jeremy. Shit, man. It's been real hanging out. And damn, I love you.
We went totally different ways on that.
Which Side is produced by the Which Side Media Collective.